proficiency in subject areas. And of course, here in North Reading, second year in a row, we're very pleased with the results overall in our 4th, 8th, and 10th grade. But I guess I wish it was just as easy as posting a score on an MCAS, because you really need to pick up on some of the issues that both Sandra and Ellen have mentioned in terms of the complex roles that schools need to play in partnerships with the community to make sure that students are provided with the environment and provided with the tools and the kind of learning environment that ultimately leads to success. Here in North Reading, we deal on a daily basis with over 2,500 students from kindergarten, preschool, all the way through seniors. And every day, as superintendent, I struggle and think about where are these students going. 4 years ago, this community and school department began on a process of looking at strategic planning. And one of the first things that we did was to set out a mission for what we believe we want to see for education here in North Reading. So I'd like to read that mission and then talk about how it relates to the issue of school safety and youth violence. But the adopted mission of the North Reading Public Schools is to educate all students for providing a safe learning environment which challenges and encourages them to be thinking, creative, and responsible individuals who are confident and committed to excellent service and lifelong learning. And I want to point out that when the Strategic Planning Committee crafted this particular mission statement 4 years ago, the emphasis was on the environment, and that word safe learning environment, even 4 years ago, was right out there in the minds of those people who participated on the Strategic Planning Committee. So how does the school department put this mission into action, and how do we work with 2,500 students who are bringing all of the issues that Sandra and Ellen have talked about on a daily basis in our schools? Well, I look at a safe learning environment along a continuum. We're working on issues that surround policy. We're talking about the physical environment. We're talking about the staffing and resources that we can provide to create a safe learning environment. We're talking about curriculum and other instructional programs. We're looking at professional development for staff. We're making sure that students are actively engaged, both in decision-making as well as their own educational process. And we're looking to make sure that the communication between the school and various components of the community and the home are very, very effective. So how can we look at each one of these issues to make sure that we have a safe learning environment? From the standpoint of policy, by law, the school committee has the ultimate responsibility to set the tone for that safe learning environment. And the school committee does that through the development and the approval of policy. The North Reading School Committee over the last year has been working to look at policies as they relate to safety. In the past year and a half, the school committee has looked at student handbooks at all levels, from high school to elementary school. It's reshaped the discipline code to be sure that it is consistent and fair, and again, in the effort of contributing to a safe learning environment. The school committee has looked at policies surrounding attendance to make sure that students are here in our schools every day. And while that has created questions about attendance, again, the overall premise behind that particular policy is to make sure that we know where students are, and that if the school department is given the responsibility for 1/3 or maybe even half of the day working with children and students, we need to be sure that they're here. The school committee has also reviewed and enhanced policies dealing with substance abuse and making sure that our schools are free of illegal substances. And finally, the school committee has looked at policies as it relates to the exclusion of students and the suspension of students when issues surrounding safety are going to be compromised. We need to be able to work with students in a variety of ways. So we begin by thinking about a safe learning environment from a very formal process of policy. We also begin in looking at the fundamentals of the physical environment. You walked into this building tonight, I hope that you were struck by the fact that it's a very clean environment. environment. We pride ourselves, I know the custodial staff and the maintenance staff, the entire staff in our schools prides itself on the fact that we have very clean and orderly schools. And while that may seem to some people to be a minor factor, it does send right up front a very important message to all who come to the school building that this is a place of order, this is a place where people care about their home, their environment, and we want to maintain that. We want to encourage anyone who's visiting our schools to make sure that they're communicating directly with the office. So we simply don't open our school buildings to anyone who's just walking in without greeting them or making sure that at least there's that initial contact. Here in the high school, for example, you'll see a table out by the front door, and very oftentimes there'll be a staff member who will be sitting at that table as a way of serving as an immediate greeter. We do restrict our entranceways to the primary entranceway as a way of getting in. That certainly does not at all obstruct the ability to get out of the building, but it does make sure that our schools are at least safe from the physical standpoint of who is able to come in, and is there going to be some visibility for people who are moving in and out of the buildings. Believe it or not, the physical environment is also looking at our restrooms, our bathrooms. We do make sure that these are safe environments, and again, we've implemented a number of strategies to be sure that they're used in appropriate ways. Even our transportation system, we work very closely with our bus drivers. We do have a video monitoring system on our buses that is revolving around the buses. No one really knows when it's on and when it's not, but it sends a message that, again, we do care about safety from a physical standpoint. And we also monitor our parking lots, particularly here at the high school. We do register both student as well as faculty cars. It's another way to send a message that the physical environment, the basic school buildings are secure. From the standpoint of staffing, this also contributes, I believe, to making sure that we are attending to creating a safe learning environment. We work to be sure that our schools are staffed with certified and expert school counselors who can deal with many of the issues that students are bringing on a social and emotional basis in our schools. We have school psychologists that are supported through both the school budget and the grants, and we also are working to be sure that the health and the physical well-being of our students are attended to by making sure moving toward full-time nurses and health prevention in each of our schools. We have, through grant programs, set up peer counseling programs within all of our schools through at-risk counselors. And we also work to make sure that students have opportunities to interact with adults, both in music programs that you can hear behind me, as well as a full range of advisors and coaches who work with students outside of that classroom. I think the fundamental issue here is that it's important that every student, pick up on a phrase that Ellen used, feels connected throughout the entire day to adults in varieties of capacities. Much of that work is supported through initiatives that we work on in terms of grants. We have in recent years secured a truancy grant here at the high school. We have system-wide grants that deal with safe and drug-free schools and tobacco cessation, and a number of other grants that, again, that bring programs and people into the North Reading Public Schools. From the standpoint of professional development, it is critical that we keep our staff constantly up to the level of dealing with a variety of issues around school safety and violence. In the last several years, we have provided direct training opportunities for staff at all levels on issues such as tolerance and diversity. We have brought a program known as the World of Difference program that's created and sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League into our schools. We have staff training around issues of substance abuse. We do staff training in areas of health prevention. We have staff training that has occurred and ongoing in conflict resolution and peer mediation. At our elementary level, we've done staff training in the area of bullying and also system-wide on sexual harassment. From the standpoint of curriculum, again, it's not simply MCAS, it's not simply the grades and the graduation requirements, but we look at programs that we can bring into schools that make sure that students, again, feel connected. In our elementary schools, we're exploring the Reaching Out to Schools, the social competency program that comes out of Wellesley College and the Stone Center at Wellesley College. We have a very successful community-based justice program, and certainly North Reading is known for its involvement in the DARE program. Student involvement, another aspect of making sure that students feel connected. We supported our high school, the Alliance Against Racism and Violence, that allows students with an opportunity to explore issues that deal with violence and racism. We have peer leader programs in all of our schools. And again, the focus here is to be sure that students feel that they can connect to adults and they can connect to the whole issue, the broader issue that's out there in society. Communication is another aspect of our work. We maintain a very active school and community zero-based tolerance committee. Our school councils in each of our schools look at our student handbooks. They deal with curriculum issues. They deal with policy issues. Again, the opportunity here is to bring together a coalition of police and fire, recreation, the churches, and various youth organizations to focus on students to be sure that not only in the schools but outside of the schools, it's a safe learning environment. All of this speaks to the issue of school climate. Again, goes back to our mission, which is the sense that we're trying to provide a safe learning environment. We cannot achieve successful MCAS scores or any other kind of quality education if we're not attending to the issues, the individual needs of students. I hope as we look to the future that we can continue to implement many of the programs that have been very successful in the past and begin to look to move to the future in terms of assessing all of our standards and procedures as they relate to school safety. I look forward to the full implementation of our strategic plan that gets to the heart of that mission, that we're trying to provide a safe learning environment that ultimately will lead to committed students who will feel successful as they move out of the North Reading Public Schools and into the broader community as productive citizens.
I guess I'm up. There are several things that I would forewarn you about with regard to me in my comments. One of them is I have a sense of humor, so if I say something that's a little confusing, it was intended to be humor. Secondly, I'm trained as a teacher, and so if I repeat some of the things that my colleagues on this panel have already said, that's important because I'm trying to emphasize areas of the curriculum for you so that you will in fact do well on the next MCAS. That the first comment that I would like to make with regard to tonight's subject, which is youth violence, is an interesting observation. You may have already thought about it. The fact is, violence isn't new. It was really attested to for me recently as I flipped through a magazine, American Heritage. Some of you may be familiar with it. And as I looked at the November issue, there was an article around the riot, in that riot that remade a city. And the sub-headline says, youths kill up to 23 in siege at high school. What's interesting about it is that it occurred on May 10th, 1849 in New York. So violence and school issues are not new. They continue, and they're broad-based. We need to understand that what we're dealing with in North Reading is recognizing that these are societal issues and then focusing in our community to do the best things that we can do. That youth, kids, have always been a part of violence, and we look at very acceptable aspects of violence in some ways societally and then wonder why we get violence outside of the parameters of that acceptability. I think that what I'm talking about there is clearly who fights the wars that we feel as members of society we need to engage in to protect the broader base of society. Those are kids. They're the youth. That